Your head pounds with a relentless ache. Your mouth feels completely dry. Light hits your eyes like a physical strike because your senses are overwhelmed by violent chemical imbalances. You know this exact misery. You have felt this pain before. Your stomach churns with a deep and unsettling nausea. Every single sound in the room feels dangerously loud. Your brain is begging for relief. Your body feels heavy and uncoordinated. You reach for a glass of water with trembling hands. You wonder why you did this to yourself. How did this happen? For millions of years of human history, this was not a weekend mistake. This was a matter of pure survival. You are a primate living high in the ancient forest canopy. The world around you is vast and green and filled with danger. You survive entirely on a diet of fresh, sugary fruit. Finding ripe fruit means the difference between life and starvation in a fiercely competitive environment. Every day is a desperate hunt for calories. You swing from branch to branch in search of sustenance. You rely entirely on your sharp vision to spot bright colors in the green leaves. You rely on your keen sense of smell to survive the dense foliage. Do you smell that sweet scent drifting up from the dark forest floor? The scent is powerful and strange. It comes from fruit that has fallen from the very highest branches. It has been sitting on the warm, moist ground for several days. The jungle floor is a chaotic place of decay and rebirth. The tough skin of the fruit is split wide open. This rupture allows microscopic organisms to enter the sugary flesh. These organisms are invisible to your primitive eyes. This invisible process is a biological reaction called fermentation. It is happening all around you in the damp heat of the jungle. What exactly is fermentation? It is a brilliant and very simple biological mechanism. It is a war for calories fought on a microscopic scale. Tiny living organisms called wild yeast consume the pure sugar trapped inside the fallen fruit. They are hungry just like you. The specific yeast is called Saccharomyces cerevisiae. As they digest this precious sugar, they release a toxic chemical waste product. This waste product is called ethanol. You know it simply as alcohol. The fruit is actively rotting on the jungle floor. It is transforming into something entirely new. Would you willingly eat a rotting piece of fruit? You actually do not have a choice in the matter. Food is becoming incredibly scarce in your rapidly changing environment. The world is entering the late Miocene epoch. The global climate is cooling dramatically. The massive, unbroken canopies of the dense tropical forests are beginning to shrink. The safe world of the trees is disappearing. You are left constantly hungry. Your daily search for fresh fruit yields less and less food. You are physically forced to climb down from the absolute safety of the tall trees. You must search the dangerous ground for calories. The ground is terrifying. It is filled with fast, sharp-toothed predators. You pick up the fermented, mushy fruit. You eat it eagerly. How does your primitive body handle this strange new chemical? At first, it does not handle the chemical well at all. Your liver is not prepared for this onslaught. The pure ethanol is technically a deadly poison to your delicate digestive system. It rapidly enters your bloodstream. It travels quickly to your brain. It heavily impairs your essential motor skills. Your vision blurs slightly. Your balance is compromised. You stumble on the uneven forest floor. A clumsy primate stumbling on the ground is a very easy meal for a fast apex predator. A saber-toothed cat would easily catch you. How did your early ancestors survive this incredibly dangerous state of mind? They adapted through a massive stroke of blind genetic luck. Evolution is not a planned process. It is a series of random biological accidents. Around 10 million years ago, a very specific and permanent mutation occurred in your genetic code. This was a tiny shift in your DNA. This sudden mutation permanently changed a specific enzyme in your liver. This enzyme is known as alcohol dehydrogenase. Scientists call it ADH4 for short. Enzymes are simply biological tools that your body uses to break down dangerous chemicals safely. Before this mutation, the tool was weak and inefficient. This brand new tool was incredibly powerful. It allowed you to digest ethanol 40 times faster than any previous generation of primates. You could now eat the rotting fruit and stay relatively sober. Can you see the massive evolutionary advantage hidden in this biological mutation? Dr. Robert Dudley is an evolutionary biologist who studies this exact biological phenomenon. He works at the University of California, Berkeley. He has spent years observing primates and analyzing human genetics. He proposed a fascinating and highly regarded idea. He called it the drunken monkey hypothesis. The hypothesis suggests a radical new way of looking at our history. It suggests that your ancestors evolved the ability to process alcohol, not to party. They evolved it to locate hidden calories safely. Alcohol evaporates easily and carries a very strong scent. The strong smell of alcohol traveling on the wind acted like a chemical beacon. It led your starving ancestors straight to incredibly calorie-dense food sources hidden in the thick brush. You followed the scent. You ate the rotting fruit. You survived the terrible ancient famine because your liver could handle the poison. You outlived the primates who could not smell the alcohol. You outlived the primates who got too drunk to run away. But what is the true physiological cost of this evolutionary survival trick? The actual cost is the violent chemical process currently happening inside your liver. Breaking down toxins is hard, damaging work. When your body breaks down pure alcohol, it does not just disappear harmlessly into the void. It undergoes a brutal chemical transformation. It physically transforms into a highly toxic and extremely volatile compound. This compound is called acetaldehyde. This new chemical compound is actually far more damaging and dangerous than the original alcohol itself. It is a known carcinogen. It is a cellular poison. It triggers a massive, system-wide inflammatory response throughout your entire physical body. Your body reacts as if it has a severe infection. It releases cytokines. These are small proteins that signal immune cells to attack. Is this exactly why your head is throbbing right now? Yes, that is exactly why you are in pain. Your brain is not actually dehydrated, but the tissues around it are inflamed. Your body is desperately trying to clear the poison from your vital organs as fast as possible. It works overtime to convert the acetaldehyde into a safer substance called acetate. But the process is slow. It floods your entire system with defensive immune cells. It completely drains your internal hydration levels to flush out the kidneys. You feel terrible because your body is fighting a massive internal war. You are experiencing the ancient physiological tax of a high-calorie prehistoric meal. The very first hangover was literally born on the wet forest floor millions of years ago. It was the price of survival. It was the cost of a full stomach. But how did you go from eating rotten fruit to brewing vast quantities of liquid alcohol? Fast forward to about 12,000 years ago. The world has changed drastically again. You are now a fully modern human living in the ancient Middle East. You belong to a culture known as the Natufians. The last great ice age is finally ending. The massive glaciers are melting away. The climate is bringing warmer, wetter weather. Vast rolling fields of wild golden grain are spreading across the landscape. You are a nomadic hunter-gatherer. You constantly move across the dangerous landscape following animal herds. You carry your few possessions on your back. You live a hard, mobile life. Why would you suddenly decide to stop moving and stay in one single place? The traditional historical story says you stopped moving to invent the science of agriculture. Textbooks tell you that you wanted a stable food supply. You supposedly wanted to grow wild wheat to bake large quantities of nutritious bread. You supposedly wanted to tame the land. But the modern archaeological record tells a completely different and much stranger human story. The timeline of human history does not match the bread theory. You did not actually settle down to bake bread. Bread is complicated and requires massive amounts of gathered grain. You settled down to brew beer. You settled down to create alcohol. Does that sound entirely impossible to your modern ears? Let us carefully recreate a very specific day in your ancient life to understand this profound shift. You are standing near a massive stone structure. This place is known today as Göbekli Tepe. This is a giant ceremonial site located in modern Turkey. It is a marvel of ancient engineering. It features massive, T-shaped limestone pillars carved with fierce animals. It was built by hunter-gatherers long before farming was ever officially invented. There are no houses here. There are no domesticated crops here. Yet, hundreds of people have gathered. You have spent weeks gathering heavy baskets full of tough wild wheat and barley from the surrounding hills. Your hands are blistered and cut from the sharp stalks. You crush the tough grains by hand. You grind them between two incredibly heavy flat stones. You do this for hours until your muscles ache and your back screams in pain. What are you going to do with all this crushed organic material? You do not bake it into dough. You place the crushed grain into a massive carved limestone vat sitting in the center of the camp. These vats can hold over 40 gallons of liquid. You add water from a nearby stream. You leave it entirely exposed to the open air. You leave it to the occasional passing rainstorm. You trust in the invisible forces of nature. Invisible wild yeast from the air settles naturally onto the watery, nutrient-rich mixture. The hungry yeast remembers its ancient purpose. It immediately begins to consume the natural sugars hidden deep in the wet grain. The cloudy liquid begins to change. It begins to bubble and froth with a very strange, living energy. It emits a sour, pungent odor. It takes days for the process to complete. Are you brave enough to actually drink this mysterious, sour mixture? You gather around the stone vat with the other members of your tribe. You dip a simple carved wooden vessel directly into the thick, cloudy liquid. It does not look anything like the clear, heavily filtered beverages you know today. It is not cold or refreshing. It is extremely gritty. It is sharply sour. It is packed with floating bits of dead plant matter and husks. It is a primitive, chunky gruel. You take a long, deep drink from the wooden vessel. You swallow the coarse liquid. It burns the back of your throat slightly. The concentrated ethanol enters your bloodstream almost immediately. It bypasses your normal digestive delays. It rushes straight to your brain. How does this sudden chemical rush change your perception of the harsh ancient world? The pure alcohol rapidly lowers your natural inhibitions. It depresses your central nervous system. It magically eases your constant, daily survival anxiety. For the first time in weeks, you do not worry about the weather or the predators. You feel a sudden, incredibly warm connection to the armed people standing around you in the dark. These are people from other tribes. These are people you would normally view with intense suspicion or violent hostility. In a brutal world filled with deadly predators, disease, and endless physical labor, this feeling is entirely magical. It is a profound psychological relief. You begin to sing. You begin to dance. You bond closely with complete strangers in the warm firelight. You share stories and trade valuable goods. You have just participated in the very first communal human feast in recorded history. It is a moment of pure human connection driven entirely by a chemical reaction. But the magical chemical feeling cannot last forever, can it? The bright sun rises the very next morning over the ancient, dusty hills. The fires have burned down to cold ash. You wake up directly on the hard ground. You wake up with a terrible, sinking realization in your stomach. The magic has completely evaporated. Your head pounds with a relentless, inescapable ache. It makes opening your eyes incredibly painful to the harsh morning light. Your mouth feels completely dry. Your tongue feels like it is packed with coarse sand. Your liver is desperately fighting the toxins. The toxic acetaldehyde is currently ravaging your delicate internal organs. It is triggering massive, painful inflammation in every joint and muscle. You feel profoundly weak and sick. Why would you ever do this terrible thing to yourself again? You absolutely do it again because the new social bonds are far too important to abandon. The hangover is temporary, but the alliances you made are a matter of life and death. The trade agreements ensure your tribe will survive the winter. Dr. Patrick McGovern understands this ancient bargain perfectly. He is a brilliant pioneer in a complex scientific field called biomolecular archaeology. He works at the University of Pennsylvania Museum. He specifically studies the ancient chemical residues left behind on the insides of broken clay pottery. He uses gas chromatography and mass spectrometry to look back in time. He has dedicated his entire professional life to finding the absolute oldest alcoholic drinks in human history. His massive discoveries prove that your ancient ancestors were completely obsessed with this magical, mind-altering liquid. They dedicated vast resources to its creation. Where did he find the ultimate scientific proof of this dangerous ancient human obsession? He found it at an incredible archaeological site called Jiu. This site is located in the Hunan province of ancient China. It sits near the Yellow River. This remarkably preserved ancient settlement dates back over 9,000 long years. It is one of the oldest known villages in the world. Inside the dark ancient mud tombs, researchers made a stunning discovery. They discovered perfectly intact and sealed clay jars. These jars were buried alongside the dead. Dr. McGovern carefully analyzed the microscopic chemical traces trapped deeply in the porous clay walls of the ancient jars. He extracted the ancient molecules. The final laboratory results were absolutely astonishing to the entire scientific community. The results rewrote the timeline of human chemistry. Do you have any idea what they were actually drinking in those ancient times? They were drinking a highly complex and incredibly well-engineered chemical cocktail. It was not a simple fermented gruel. The specific chemical signature revealed a potent, multi-ingredient mixture. It contained fermented rice. It contained wild honey for extra sugar. It contained tart hawthorn fruit and wild grapes to provide the necessary yeast. This was not a random accident of nature like the rotting fruit on the ancient forest floor. This was a deliberate, careful, and highly sophisticated ancient recipe. It was designed to perfectly maximize human intoxication and flavor. Your brilliant ancestors spent vast amounts of precious time, resources, and daily energy creating this specific drink. They had to gather the honey from angry bees. They had to cultivate the rice in flooded fields. Why was this liquid so absolutely vital to their continued social existence? Alcohol was the powerful social glue that held massive groups of aggressive ancient humans completely together. Before modern civilization, humans were incredibly territorial. You only lived in very small, closely related tribes. Your group consisted of perhaps 50 people. You knew everyone intimately. When hundreds of heavily armed people gathered to build giant stone monuments or trade, the situation was highly volatile. Social tensions ran dangerously high. A single misunderstanding could lead to a bloody massacre. Alcohol magically acted as a vital chemical lubricant. It successfully prevented massive violence among suspicious strangers. It forced a temporary state of relaxed trust. It allowed massive, diverse crowds to peacefully cooperate. It allowed them to safely celebrate the harvest. It allowed them to share incredibly complex new ideas without killing each other. It facilitated the sharing of tool-making techniques and agricultural knowledge. Is it actually possible that human civilization itself is just a completely accidental byproduct of ancient brewing? Many modern archaeologists and anthropologists now strongly believe this exact, counterintuitive theory. The theory is gaining massive traction in the scientific community. Farming is incredibly difficult. It is physically destructive, backbreaking work. It causes joint disease and spinal compression. Ancient people generally tried to avoid farming completely at all costs. Hunter-gatherers actually had more free time and better diets than early farmers. You would only ever endure the pure physical misery of early farming if the final reward was truly spectacular. Bread was not a spectacular enough reward to justify a life of endless toil. The intense daily desire for a highly reliable, endless supply of beer literally forced you to plant crops. You needed a surplus of grain that gathering wild plants could not provide. You built permanent, fortified villages just to protect your precious, slow-growing fields of grain from thieves and wild animals. You invented complex irrigation systems to ensure the harvest. You invented writing to track grain stores and beer rations. Those early, beer-obsessed villages eventually became large cities. Those cities became massive, sprawling empires. Those empires laid the foundation for the incredibly complex modern world you live in today. Every skyscraper and highway can trace its lineage back to a stone vat of bubbling grain. What happens when you look at your own modern life through this deep ancient lens? Think about the very last time you woke up feeling completely destroyed by a long night out. You lay in the dark room, hating the sunlight. You probably blamed your own terrible lack of personal self-control. You blamed your poor decision-making. You regretted the extra drink you shared with a stranger. You sincerely promised yourself as you lay in bed that you would never, ever drink poison again. You swore it was the last time. But your suffering physical body was not experiencing a modern moral failure. It was simply following a 10-million-year-old biological survival script. This script is written deep into your DNA. Your tough ancestors willingly endured the exact same intense nausea. They suffered the exact same splitting headache. They endured it to survive the shrinking forests. They endured it to build the foundations of human society. The pain is the bridge between you and the ancient past. Are you truly ready to face the bright morning light? Your own physical body is a walking, breathing museum of prehistoric choices and ancient survival strategies. Every ache and pain has an evolutionary origin. The specific ADH4 enzymes quietly working in your liver are a direct biological link to the starving primates in the shrinking Miocene forests. Your intense desire to gather safely with friends over a drink is an exact behavioral echo of the ancient feasts at Göbekli Tepe. The urge to bond, to share stories, and to lower your guard is an ancient survival mechanism. The miserable hangover is not a modern punishment for bad behavior. It is rather the ancient biological tax carefully collected on human progress. It is the price of civilization. You know this exact misery. A relentless ache pounds your head.